is Easy for Life Coaching Solutions, where we strive to provide a values-driven experiential approach to life coaching. Um, and this particular interview is focused on family tips, family wellness tips and tools. And we have Tamara Sherie here. We're also joined by Ivory Edwards-Atkins and Penelope Stewart. Um, and hopefully we can get some other people to join us in this conversation. So we're actually going to be playing 21 questions. There are 21 questions I've created to ask Tamara. And so Tamara Sherie is a wonderful daughter, an amazing cousin, an awesome aunt, a world traveler, a phenomenal cook, just an overall bright star in her family circle. And we have her here today to get some tips and tools out of her about how to handle emotional lows and emotional experiences. And so, Tamara Sherie, hello and welcome.
Hello. How are you?
Doing great. Glad that you could take the time out here today to join us for this solution focused brief interview.
hmm
Um,
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
yes. So everyone here kind of knows that this interview developed from a post, and it was actually new information for me because I didn't know, and I've known Tamara Sherie for all of her life. As if anybody who does not know us doesn't know, I've known her all her life, but I've never known that she experienced emotional lows. And so this interview developed as a result of a Facebook post. And so immediately, I guess she probably at the time that she posted, she didn't know that she had a content hungry cousin. And this would turn into a, this would turn into a solution focused interview. But so that's where this interview developed from. So I guess the first question that I have, Tamara, is when did you first start experiencing an emotional low or low mood?
Honestly, I think it started in college. And I didn't know exactly what it was because no one, especially as a black community, talked about mental health issues besides PMS. I always attributed my, like low energy or just not wanting to do things in isolation to PMS because most times it would happen around that time of the month. So I really didn't know exactly what it was um, until an event happened, and I actually had to start, seeking counseling. And this was, I believe, in 2000, because yeah, it had to be in 2000, the year 2000 or 99. Yeah, it was
Okay.
around 99 or 2000 when
Okay.
yeah, when I quote unquote was clinically diagnosed of that. Let me put that.
Right. And so I think it's important that we talk about that. And that's why I started out by asking about an emotional low, because we use depression, or we say that a person is depressed when they haven't had a psychiatric evaluation from a
Uh-huh.
psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner. So I think that that's an area of growth or awareness that we have to move into, within among us as Black people, not to diagnose a person with depression until they've actually been clinically diagnosed by a mental health professional.
Exactly. And then I think that the people use the word depression also a little too loosely to self diagnose themselves because there's a big difference between stress, depression, anxiety, and everyday life situations that go on that can cause you to feel a certain way.
Yes, agreed. I agree.
Right.
And you mentioned another fact, or you mentioned another condition that makes what women experience different from what men experience. The emotional
Mm-hmm.
setback. You mentioned PMS, and
Right.
so at what point did you realize that? Or was it, in 2000 when you got the diagnosis from a mental health professional that you realized that, hey, this is something different from the emotional lows that I experienced with is it premenstrual syndrome or,
Yes.
okay,
It's premenstrual. Yes.
okay,
Um, I think because I just got to a low point, and I honestly didn't want to die necessarily. I just was at a point where I felt like if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I would be fine. And
okay,
when it got to that point, is when I had to have um, the clinical diagnosis and go to the counseling and actually start counseling and dealing with a lot of things that were going on in my life at that time. That got me to that point where it was so low.
okay. And so, yeah, I guess that moves us into the next question.
Okay.
So the I guess we can safely say depression now because you said you received an actual diagnosis in 2000, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so is the depression that you experience, would you say it's biological? Is it situational, circumstantial, or or is it something related to all everything?
I think it's all of the above
Okay.
because that's the thing about depression. It comes on and you don't know where and why you're feeling the way that you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything could be going great in life. Um, you're happy, and then all of a sudden, it's like literally a dark cloud over you. Like
Mm-hmm.
you like 1 minute you're jolly jolly happy, thinking about everything that's going on, and then the next minute you're like, okay, why am I feeling this way? Why do I feel like I don't want to say crazy, but you start to make yourself think that you're crazy because it's like everything is going well for you. Why are you not happy at this moment? Not that you're not happy in life, period, but it's just that at the moment type thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that situational, it happens because I will, like I had um, about before, and everything was going well. I just came off a vacation, we were laughing, life was good. And I kept saying, like, why, man, why am I feeling this way? Why am I feeling this way? And it's things such as like Facebook and other things that I look back on my memories and I'm like, oh, this did happen during this time in my life. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes things trigger the depression to come on, like life events that may have happened 3 or 4 or 5, 10 years ago. And in your mind, you're not thinking of it, but somewhere in the back of your mind, you are.
Okay.
So, like with me, a lot of it is like I noticed around, like I couldn't honestly give you the actual date that my best friend passed because it's not something that I like to memorialize. When people pass, I don't like to think of the day of their death. I like to think of their birthday and just, like things that memories that we had instead of that day
Mm-hmm.
of finding out that somebody left this world.
Mm-hmm.
But I will notice that around that time I get in a low.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say to myself, let me look at different stuff, what was going on in my life, or even, pick up a journal or something, an old journal, and read it, and I'll realize that it was something going on in my life.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I guess, just knowing your history, you have experienced some losses, in regard to just losing people. And so I also know that you like games, you like to play games. And so we're going to switch from the 21 questions. And there is actually, I tried to make a game out of the stages of grief. And so there's a particular model that I like to follow. And according to this model, there are 20 different stages, right? of grief that a person has to go through in order to process grief. And on the left side, you have loss hurt. And then on the right side of the model, you have loss adjustment. And in between there are 20 different stages. So Tamara, in regard to this loss that you experienced with the very close friend, I'm going to ask you to pick a number from 1 to 20. And then I'm going to give you the stage, and you can tell me how you think it relates to how you process the loss and the grief associated with the loss of that person. Okay? So pick a number from 1 to 20.
12.
Okay. All right. And that number is isolation. So tell me if you think it's on the loss adjustment side or the loss hurt side.
I think it's on the lost hurt side.
Okay. Actually,
Because,
okay, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, so actually it's right in between loss hurt and loss adjustment.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
before it, you have loneliness, and then after it, you have depression. So you want to talk a little bit about why you picked number 12, isolation, and how you experienced it and processing the grief that you experienced with the loss of this close friend?
Um, I think, and maybe because, well, as growing up as a child, I was the only child for a long time. So even though we kind of grew up like brothers and sisters, um, I still was by myself. So a lot of times I was so used to being by myself in my room and playing by myself that I found solace in being alone. And so I notice now that when I do get in the mood of depression, I feel like being alone is the best thing because you don't have to answer the questions. You don't have to try to explain why all of a sudden you're busting out crying or why you have this funky attitude towards other people. I feel like if I'm alone, and even times when we lose people, it's that moment when you're by yourself that's your biggest grief and your biggest cry and your biggest um, talks and your biggest things happen. Like that's the moment that you're speaking to God. You're speaking to the person that's lost because you're alone. So I think like the isolation, it helps in some way.
Mm-hmm.
If that's the way to describe it, it just it helps. I
Mm-hmm.
don't. I mean, some people may say no, it hinders. Like you need to speak with people or do things. But honestly, for me, it's one of my coping mechanisms. It's just to be by myself. And when I feel the need to reach out and talk to people, then that's when I pick up my phone and I call and FaceTime or talk to a counselor or something like that.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, with the Facebook post, I do want to compliment you for being brave enough, for having the courage to let people know where you were. But can you talk a little bit about your process of emerging from your most recent? Would you say that was an episode of depression that you were experiencing at that point?
I wasn't experiencing it at like that exact day that I did the post.
Okay.
I had it a couple of days before that.
Okay.
And I just kept thinking, like, it was something that was in my head, like, man, this is the hardest thing, especially to a partner
Mm-hmm.
who their only thing is, I want to help you, but you don't know how to describe to them how to help you. And you can't describe the feelings that you are feeling to that person and that because they don't understand. And there's some certain things that you don't want to hear people say to you
Right.
when you are going through a depression that they may not think, is a bad thing to say, but at the same time, you're like, really, like you don't get this. So you can't judge, you can't tell me what it is that I'm going through, and yet I cannot describe it to you. So I just like was reading a lot of posts about people who were feeling down or had some things like it was over a several months that I've like noticed and picked up on other people's posts, and I'm like, hey, I'm here, call me. I may or may not know what you're going through. That made me just say, you know what, I know I'm not the only one going through this, and especially as someone of color. These are topics that we need to talk about.
So you were looking to connect with others. You were expecting some feedback.
Yeah, I was expecting feedback and I was looking to connect with people. It wasn't a thing of me reaching out at that moment because I had gotten over what I had just went through. But
Okay.
it was a thing of like you it's one of those things where you're like, I know I'm not the only one.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that if I show my vulnerability to people that life isn't all smiles, traveling, loving and things like that, that they can understand that everybody is human. We all have our faults and we all have things that we go through.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So do you feel that you got the feedback that you needed? Is it something that you would encourage someone else who is experiencing depression? Um, is it something you would encourage them to do? Do you feel that it was helpful?
It was helpful. I got a lot more back than I thought. I was like, even if one, you put up a post, and it's like if one person responds to it, it's like, oh, okay, at least that other person knows that they're not alone. You don't expect like a couple of people to respond to it, and even for people to say, oh my God, I thought, no, you're not the only one. I feel this way too, and that these are people that you consistently, quote unquote, talk to on Facebook and things that you just don't know. And honestly, with that post, I have new friends here since I moved to California, and when we get together, we talk about stuff, but never, I don't think that we would have talked about the things that we did had I not posted that. Like all of a sudden, we were all talking about different mental health issues that we were going through, and I think that opened up and made the friendship a little bit more and genuine with those people.
And that was never a discussion you guys had prior to.
No,
Okay.
no, never a discussion. Yeah, that we had. It was just like I felt like when the person sat down in front of me, they were like, "I'm not the only one. Like this is what I'm going through today," and they could say it aloud and we not be like, "Oh, okay," because you just don't think that people understand you. If you have anxiety, if you have depression, if you have these things, you like people don't understand it, but they do. They do in some sense, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we move into the next question, and actually, I want to invite Ivory and Penelope into the conversation. But can everybody else see the screen? I think, Penelope Stewart's toe might actually be in the camera.
Yep, yep. I wondered if that was her foot.
You might want to turn your camera off. No, that's the ceiling, but I guess it's up to the ceiling as long as your toe isn't in front of it.
At least, at least, at least they
I'm
were,
sorry.
at
I
least.
was just listening in. So I was just wanted to be a listening in guest today. I'm having a hard time trying to turn my camera off. So I'll keep
That's all right.
trying.
At
That's
least,
all right. Just
at
keep
least they were
push
pretty and
up.
painted.
No, that is too much. Now you didn't see Percy, so Percy just said,
Hey,
"Hi."
Percy. We got a solution focused brief interview going on here. We had a toe intruder.
Okay, I'm going to kind of opt out, and I'm trying my best to turn my camera off, but for some reason, I'm not. I don't have the ability to do so. You don't have to turn your camera off. Just put the toe down. No,
So,
Like if you flip it up, you can turn camera down. Like if you flip your screen up, the camera off function should come in. But go ahead, James. I'm sorry.
so Tamara, I guess wrapping up the last question, you did get the feedback you were looking for, and as a result, some deeper relationships were,
Conversations.
yeah, deeper
Yeah,
conversations were had
and
with
deeper
people.
conversations, and like you said, it deepened the relationship
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
now I feel like I think when you show your most vulnerable side to people, they can see you. If that makes any sense. It's
Or
like you
they
just don't
see
see this. Oh
another
no,
side of you, right? They get to know a different.
exactly.
Okay.
They see another side of you. Right,
Mm-hmm.
right, right.
All right. So this next question, we Penelope and Ivory, you guys can probably add information, add some information to this next question. It won't, just be all on you to answer tomorrow. But what are your thoughts about the family patterns of mental health challenges among Black people? Where do you think we are? Where do you think we've made progress from? And where do you think we're headed?
Well, I can say that we're making progress in terms of we're having more conversations. I think the stigma surrounding mental illness or that type of problems is a lot to do with us not being as open as as um, as we need to be.
Yes.
Yeah, and I
And I
think,
also think that.
go ahead.
Go ahead. I think that that's the thing is like families are finally talking to each other about issues that were, I guess, quote unquote, forbidden before that, you know, you're finding out that you're actually relating more to your family. There's conversations that are being raised, and the person doesn't have to feel like, oh my God, I'm the only one. 'Cause if you don't talk about it, you don't know that this may be a biological thing that is passed down,
Mm-hmm.
different mental health disorders passed down, throughout generations, but you would never know that because they were like, oh, we just thought that person was crazy. You know,
Right.
that's how it was focused back in the day. Oh, we just thought they were crazy, this and that. But it's like, no. And you don't want to feel like that. You don't want to feel like the crazy one in the family.
Right. And then too, you have to include religion into
Yes.
this because when something could have been diagnosed earlier as a mental illness, it was diagnosed as the devil.
Right.
And so with that, we never really addressed the mental illness at a young age. I personally have seen some traits where I could identify it early and could tell the person's parent, you need to check into that
Right.
because those are some behaviors I've witnessed before.
Right.
And so being open enough, and I guess it depends on the different family diagnosis or dynamics.
Yes.
All families don't have the problem of not talking with one another,
Right.
communicating like that, but some do. And I think in our family or this family, that is like we wasn't open like that.
Right. And that's another thing where you say like how religion ties into it. You know, people say, oh, something may be the devil or just pray on it, but it gets to a point,
Hmm.
especially when I am like at my lowest lows or whatever, that I bring that into it where I pray and I call myself talking to God, but at the same time, it's like, well, why can't I get the answers that I need
Hmm.
about what's going on with me? Like you're seeking for answers of things and you're praying like, God, would you just relieve this? Would you just do this? Would you just let me understand? Can you help me to understand what it is so I can tell somebody else what it is? And when you never get that answer, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It's just like,
Yeah, we
not
know.
that
We
you
say we
turn away.
pray. Everybody says they're praying, they're talking to God, but then
Right.
it's like, what kind of conversations do you have with God in
Exactly.
regards to your feelings and your hurt? Or how do you actually try to find understanding in dealing with the challenges that you're going through?
Exactly.
And I think a lot of times some people would say, you know, there like even with the stages of grief, there are set stages that they say we're supposed to go through. And I have actually been challenged to say, well, maybe I've been through that stage already, or I would say I got to find a new way to deal with this.
But
And
you
it
know
had to
what?
be.
Right. That's the thing too. Um, Auntie Ivory, people have to understand that when they're going through stages of grief, nobody has a timeline of when what stage will hit you.
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to explain this to people too. Like when there is a passing or a death in the family, everybody's grieving is different. And I say this because I'm like, just say with you and my mom, you guys lost your father, but your relationship with your father is different. Both of you can grieve because you lost a parent, but the way that your relationship was different. Where that person can't say, my mom can say, "Well, I know exactly how you feel, Ivory," and you can't say, "I know exactly how you feel, Penelope," because y'all had different relationships with that one person that you lost. Yes, you could grieve as siblings, but so far as on a personal level, you can't say that you know how somebody feels.
Exactly. You can't dictate it. I learned that
Mm-hmm.
because, even experiencing my mother's death, I remember we were a little harder on Donna about getting through that. And, but we have to be able to identify, okay, are you using it for my own? I don't want to use it for my own selfish purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Or am I trying to work this thing through?
Right.
And the thing is, I feel like, and I did, and with myself primarily, a lot of soul searching prior to death, before when he was sick, and whatever. So it moved me along, I guess, in some of those stages,
Right.
because of the tears or what cry, yeah, whole bunch of breaking down prior to his death.
Right.
So when it was coming time to be close to death, I was kind of a little bit more prepared for it personally.
Uh-huh. But I don't honestly think that anybody is prepared for a loss, no matter what that other person goes through, when you see the deterioration of her. Because even like with my father, and that's another thing where James says is a situational. I think the right when I did that post, it was like I said, everything was going fine. I couldn't quite put my finger
Mm-hmm.
on why I was feeling the way I did. But then I look back and I'm like, oh, you know what? I was going through some real emotional battles, 2 years prior to this. And it was around this time that I thought that I was going to actually lose my father. And I felt like I was going crazy. Like, like I'm like, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with that? Oh my God. Just thinking of everybody else besides myself. Like, how are the kids going to deal with it? What is life going to be like without this person? So I think that, like I said before, you don't think of all of this stuff all of the time, but somewhere in the back of your mental, um, somewhere deep in your brain,
The
those memories
library.
are stored. Yes,
Yes.
you have a library of it, and that will sometimes be your trigger for what you're going through.
And so, Tamara, I guess I want to go back to what I thought I heard, and you let me know if I'm interpreting it, if I'm saying it correctly. Did you say when you are at an emotional low, or when you are experiencing depression, you are looking for an answer and an explanation, and you're expecting it to be spiritual? Is that what I heard?
You expect it to be anything.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, if you have a question that hasn't been answered for years,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, I could go a whole year and not have an episode, but then I could have one year where I have two or three back to back. So I can't just say that I'm depressed all the time. That I know, but I can understand. I know my body, and I know how I act, and I know how I get involved in things where it's me trying not to think about the fact that I am in a low state.
And so, do you?
Like I like go ahead.
And so, do you feel like you learned something different from each emotional low you experience? Like, do you feel like you got something different from this last episode of depression you experienced, or learned something different about yourself?
Yeah, I learned something different about myself, and I learned something different about other people,
Okay.
also.
Okay.
Because it's just like you said, like for me, even putting that post up, I learned that other people were experiencing some things in their lives. I learned basically each time I learn when it does happen, I learn more and more how to, I guess you say, recognize it, so that I can kind of stop it early. You
Okay.
know, that I can early on until like kind of, I don't even know how to describe it. It's not stopping it. It's just recognizing it early enough to say, okay, Sherie, maybe you need to call somebody and talk right now before it gets too bad.
Right.
Or you just sitting here crying all day, or you just sitting on the couch and don't want to move and this and that. But I said, like, when I was by myself, I never had to worry to explain that to anybody else. But when you're around other people and they witness it, you have to do the explaining, or your feelings are hurt because of what somebody might say.
So, are you saying like this experience was a little bit different because you are in a relationship? There was a significant other involved.
A caring significant other involved, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's different, I think, and I'm not trying to, throw shade or anything like that on anyone, but when you have somebody who genuinely cares for you enough to know that when you walk into a room and or they're in the room with you and they stop to say, what's going on with you? Like something is different about you. Like, is there anything you need? Do you need me to do something for you? Like, that actually are asking and can pick up on signs of you not being yourself. That's what I'm just trying to say. Versus, well, everybody goes through that, or things like that, or hell, everybody loses people, and kind of like that move on mentality. I'm stressed. I'm like, yeah, stress and depression are two different things, though.
So yeah, so I guess what I'm hearing is it's helpful to have someone willing to fill in the gap for you to kind of assist you out of where you are.
Yeah, but it's a 50-50.
Okay.
It reassures you that you have somebody there
Mm-hmm.
and you're grateful for it. But at the same time, it's like, you can't do anything to help me because I don't know what to tell you to do to help me, which makes it almost worse.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like I think we've had this conversation. You're like, well, did you share with him about this beforehand? I'm like, yeah, we talked about it beforehand, because I'm like, especially before I move in with someone, I'm like, hey, there may be times where I just don't feel like doing nothing. I may be kind of agitated. I don't want you to take it personally if I'm not talking to you as much, or if I go in the room and close the door and I just want to lay there. I don't want you to think it's because I don't want to be with you, or that I don't want to be around you. It's just I'm going through some things and I need to work it out on my own, because that's how I've been. I know you hate this word coping, but dealing and coping with it for now, and there's nothing that that person can do and say. But I do appreciate the fact that it's like, what can I do for you? Or let me know when I can do something for you.
Mm-hmm. And so this next question, I guess, is kind of twofold. I went and it's going back in the 21 questions, but I guess you can answer it. In regard to your personal experience, and I guess it kind of relates to maybe even our family experience, and then culturally, just as a people. But what role does medication and therapy play in the way that you manage, your depression? I think you said you saw a therapist back in 2000. Have you seen one since? And have they ever
Yeah,
suggested
I
medication? What are your thoughts?
I talked to a counselor.
Okay.
Whenever I feel like this, I have access to a counselor that I talk to. I feel like this state is a pill pusher pharmaceutical state. Everything that we have something wrong for, they're always trying to give you a pill to solve it instead of getting deep down to the root of whatever is causing your pain, your whatever it is in your body. So for me, medication was not a pill was not an option for me personally
Okay.
because this wasn't something that I dealt with daily. And when I did, I'm not saying that I did not try the medication because I did try the medication, but I felt like the medication actually made me feel worse than those couple of days that I may have been going through something. It was like it took away my oomph to me. Like it made me mellow. Like, but too mellow, like I didn't want to do anything mellow.
Hey,
But like I said before, I think that, huh?
can you tell us what were you taking? What medication you were taking?
I can't even remember the name of the medication I
Mm,
took because it's so, like I said, that was over 2 years ago that I actually took the medication.
okay.
And I stopped taking whatever it was, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with another solution um, with this. And honestly, just talking to people, or even someone listening to you, or if you know somebody who's going through some mental whatever they're going through, like anxiety or depression, you just listening to them and not putting in your 2 cents of what you think they should do, whatever. The listening is, I think, that sometimes all people want.
Okay.
And it helps me that when I
Mm,
call my friends or if I call family, if someone just listens to let me get out whatever it is I'm feeling at that time and just listen to me, I feel like I'm kind of being heard and I'm releasing that instead of keeping it to myself.
okay.
So counseling, I believe in therapy as in counseling, talking to someone. You can talk to someone inside your circle, outside your circle. I personally feel that professional counseling is the way to go when
Okay.
you're going through anything in life, whether it be a trauma that you went through or just dealing with day to day stuff. I honestly think that counseling is the thing. But as I said before, I just don't like the fact that every time somebody has something wrong with them, the first thing the doctors want to do is prescribe you a pill to solve it.
So have you not taken medication since the first time you were prescribed medication?
Yep,
Okay. All right.
yep, I have not.
Okay.
And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm against medications because I do not believe in pain, and I will take a pain pill in a second. But when you're just giving me stuff and you can't tell me exactly what it is that the pill is doing, or sometimes the side effects are worse than what you're going through, I honestly don't think that I should be taking it, and that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and I just think I don't know if that's, culturally how we look at taking medication or culturally how we, address uh medical, treatment or, mental health treatment in general. We're just apprehensive, as a people.
Yeah, but it's not just us because I talk to people, from other cultures, especially at my job, and a lot of people feel the same way. It's not that you. I think culturally we might be apprehensive of doctors, period,
Okay.
like going to the doctor,
Mm-hmm.
getting diagnosed with that. But I think the whole big pharma thing, everybody is feeling that,
Okay.
especially now
Okay.
because you hear about the vaccinations and whatever. Culturally, that people are like, I ain't getting that because Tuskegee and blah blah blah, whatever. But we're not the only ones that's saying we're not getting it. You get what I'm saying?
Right. I got
Like
you.
there are other cultures saying that, oh, I'm not doing it because big pharma or whatever is just trying to put their agenda on me, blah blah blah, whatever.
Ivory, did you have anything you wanted to add?
To that question,
Yeah, or just in general?
I think it's a good thing when you realize. I think every time you're going through something like that, especially when you get older, each experience will give you new information on how you feel, and of course I agree with counseling. Sometimes I feel like I should go, but then again, I never had experience where I had a really low depression like that. So, but I find mine like with talking with other people, friends, associates, or whatever, trusted people, that I can feel a whole lot better instantly.
Yeah. And that's the thing, which I try to tell people. I'm like, it's almost like talking with God. You don't wait to talk to God only because things are going bad. You talk to Him all the time. So even the thing with counseling, I'm like, yes, that's at the point when we're at our lowest that other people might say, or the powers that be may be like, oh no, you're going to get counseling. But I think that there's nothing wrong, especially if it's offered through your job, or if you
Yes.
could find some kind of program that offers it, with assistance if you don't have, insurance, or it's not offered through your job. I think it's something that everybody at least needs to experience once.
Mm-hmm.
To talk to someone who does not know you, does not know your background, does not know your family, no one who has that inside. You need to talk to them about whatever it is that's going on in your life, because there's no judgment, and you need to sometimes just get things off of your chest.
Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like with me, I find like what made me think, well, maybe I need to talk to a counselor or something, because what I didn't want to do was overburden the people that I was sharing with. And then it's like you find out that they could be very well have gone through something or going through something themselves, and they wouldn't share it with you because you're talking.
Right.
And like I said, I have friends that I know that felt like they couldn't talk to anybody. But I'm learning or have learned to be more of a listener now
Right.
and hear those conversations two way, or like, okay, maybe today is somebody else's turn, it's not your turn.
And I also tell people about, I said, just because whatever you're going through, no one can say that you're not experiencing pain or you're not experiencing something. Just
Right.
because your friend is having a worse day than you, just still doesn't negate that you are feeling the way that you are. Like everybody has their stuff. And whatever
Yeah.
your stuff is that's hard for you, it's your stuff.
And like
You
that's
know
like
that.
when you said that's when it's time to seek out counseling.
Hmm.
When like I said, never really low for me, but when I felt those times, it was like I still felt like I could manage it, and even to the point where, well, I just want to share this with this person. I'll let them do more talking, or something like that. I don't want I want to be respectful. You have that situation where you said you don't want to dump on somebody and you feel like they've been through hell once they got finished talking to you,
Right, right,
and you don't want to be that person that just goes somewhere and deposits like that.
right.
I don't. And so that's when it gets that point, yeah, counseling.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
And then
point. That's a good point, Ma.
yeah, but then also you got to think that there's just some things that you probably would share with somebody who's a professional, and that's their job, and they can't say nothing to nobody, and that you
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't share with maybe one of your friends or family members, because you don't ever want
Mm-hmm.
that person
That's
to have
true.
that stigma on
That's
you
true.
about whatever it was that you said
That's true.
or whatever it was that you went through.
That's true.
So is it safe to say that someone who knows you or like a family member uh, is more likely to pick up and share your misery from a personal space, from a emotional space versus a professional? Is that what I'm hearing?
What do you mean sharing your misery?
Or
Mm-hmm.
like my mom said, she said you don't want the person who you share your misery with to feel bad once they're done talking to you. So
Right.
Right.
is that more likely to happen with a person who knows you? versus sharing what you're experiencing with a professional?
Absolutely, it would be, you would feel that way about someone you know versus sharing with a professional. And even the person may even tell you that you did that. I'm not saying that it happened. I'm just saying I felt like I did it.
Right. And it's a thing of, especially when you're being vulnerable and you're putting your feelings and your everything out to somebody, you don't want to think back to yourself like, I wonder if they tell somebody else. Like, or you're like, I wonder if they judging me now because I did, or this happened to me, and now they're looking at me differently because I shared that with them.
Then that's true because you have a self-image and you have an image that people have of you, and you want to maintain that image. And then sometimes it's like, well, personally, I would say if I don't like to be portrayed as weaker than what I may be, or I don't want to be portrayed as weak. And I know that's not a good thing to say when I just learned something more about that, but I have it was weak moments, weak times as well. I'm not superwoman.
And my thing is like, I don't even think for myself it's about being weak. I think of more of a thing like, it's my personal business. You get what I'm saying? Like, and I don't want to have the fear of someone else knowing my personal business because I might have shared something with somebody, or that people will judge you differently because you told them something.
Right, but that's
Like,
what
now
that's
they're looking at you
exactly.
and it is a thing. You looking like you're fragile. Like, I don't want to
That's
be looked at as
exactly what I'm
fragile.
saying.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly the same thing I'm saying. We're saying it in a different way. But like you said, so definitely having a personal counselor or therapy session is more valuable because it helps you at least to maybe keep your self image intact. So yeah, but then I also want to be very authentic, as to who I am, and if I'm in that kind of relationship with people, I want to be that authentic, and I want them to be authentic with me too. That they feel comfortable enough to be vulnerable and trustworthy, and that's another thing. I want to be, I want to be trustworthy. That you can share that with me as well. So knowing that, like I pick my, I pick my people tenderly.
And I think I do too. But then at times, the people who I thought I tenderly picked have, in somewhat, betrayed our friendship didn't last as long as I thought it was, or something about it was betrayed, and I'm like, okay, like, honestly, like, when I talk about losing my best friend, I'm like, that probably was the only person that I ever told everything to. And then it was like, when that person was gone, I'm like, who do I turn to now? And I still have very, very close friends, and I'm pretty sure if they want, they can write a book on me. Some things that y'all don't know about me in my life, but it'll be a bestseller.
You just put that so low, I even hear it.
It'll be a bestseller. But those are just things like, I think it's that for me it's that trust thing. Like, I want to know that when I'm telling this person that this is going to their deathbed with them, or I want to know that I feel comfortable enough to share with this person that they're not going to tell their spouse what I just told them in casual conversation. And I want them to feel the same way about me.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And I guess it's not easy to find. I mean, you can find it. I know you can find it because I have people that have, would know whatever I've been through and have showed no difference to their love and respect for me. And confidentially, I've never heard it come back thrown at me. So, I know what you mean there, and it's important, that you can have a self-image to maintain, or a matter of self-respect, self-esteem, what have you.
But yeah, I wanna. This is it's supposed to be a solution focused brief interview, and we're going beyond our time. But there's some great points coming up. But I guess two things I wanna kind of say is just that how Facebook has turned into more than just a social outlet, social interaction outlet. It is a healing device in a lot of instances. And again, Tamara, I just want to applaud you for being brave enough, to tell, the rest of, your friends or your followers, where you were and what you were experiencing. And so just moving forward in the questions, I guess, I think that, we do have to be concerned about the people who are younger than us in regard to, even our mental health or our physical health. I think one of the things I posted, it dealt with creating like a family log where you actually, talk about and chart, mental health and physical health symptoms that different family members might experience. But Tamara, do you have any concerns about the future generations, or do you have any suggestions that you'd like to see put in place or acted upon for the future generations in regard to mental health and or physical health?
I think that with the future generations, they're talking about a lot of stuff a lot more. And I think the social media or the internet helps, in a way because they have these anonymous people to reach out to, or, you can always hide behind a keyboard and tell your true feelings. Not the bullying stance of it, but I'm just saying, like, you could reach out to people saying, hey, I'm not okay. And I just need somebody to talk to right now. And you'll be amazed at how many people reach out to you and call you where you didn't think about this person before.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that because I think we're getting better. I think like discussions like this, um, discussions like this, social media, even on TikTok. I think they got a whole thing about depression and anxiety, like anxiety TikTok, depression TikTok. You see people going through mental breakdowns on live on camera. Yeah, live on camera, and it's not. And I don't think at the time that they're doing it thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have a million hits because they're just like, man, I feel like bleak right now, and if I just want to know if somebody actually sees me, like you want to be seen. And I think a lot of people are not seen at that point in their life,
Mm-hmm.
or that they just don't feel seen. Period. They go day
That's
by
what
day with
made
this.
it like a great point of
Right.
expression. Even so many people with talents and what have you, gifts you can, it's just like even introduce, with thinking, okay, God, I need something I need to get involved with. Then somebody else can look at you or look at a post and say, I've had this happen. This is something you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you do. That's what you post about. Maybe direct your attention in that direction. And I thought that was pretty good advice, just from observing, because I can observe people by their posts. So I'm sure I can be observed the same way.
Yeah, but I also say social media. Every post isn't about somebody reaching out or something. Like primarily, I use my social media for entertainment. I don't put my personal life in there, and I don't, I might see something and think it's funny and post it, and people are like, oh, I know what you're talking about, or this. I'm like, no, I'm just posting because I thought it was freaking hilarious.
Right.
That I put it up there. It has nothing to do with me and Eugene or whatever's
Right.
going on in my life right now. I'm just posting. But that was one of the things that was one of the personal posts that I put up where I was like, it's hard to explain because I know I'm not the only one
Right. But what I
that
was
can
saying
explain
too, though, is
something.
that people can see from your post, you can see you have a great sense of humor.
Mm-hmm.
Even some things you shared with me, I say, oh, this girl is crazy. But it's something we can laugh and have learned to share with each other.
Right.
But that's something, it's another side that has opened up that I know you a little better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the
And I
shocking
hear what you.
thing. Yeah, that was the shocking thing for me because I would describe Tamara, I would describe you as a private person. Um, and it was difficult for me to accept and respect the fact that you are a private person, because I felt like, I deserve to know what's going on in your private world. But that's your right, that's your space, and people have to give you that. And so that's why it was shocking for me, to see that you made a post about what you were experiencing personally. Um, so I guess what I did hear is that you're becoming a little more hopeful about social media and the role that it can play for future generations.
Future generation, because I
Mm-hmm.
think that a lot of people are reaching out and saying, "Look, there's something wrong. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to say it, but I need help." Like for anybody to say, "I need help," I think you are probably one of the strongest people ever, because a lot of people don't reach out and say, "I need help." They keep
Absolutely.
everything
Yeah.
bottled up, or they're like, "Oh, I'm strong. I can get through this. It's just something I'm going to not." No, everybody needs help.
Yeah, at some
And
point.
like I said, that help could come into a form of just somebody listening to you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be a thing of somebody pulling you out of your situation, but you'll be amazed that once you say things like that, like, or if somebody says, "I need help," and they talk to you, and you're like, "Man, do you know I went through the same thing as you?" And I'm gonna tell you this that worked for me, that may not work for you, but they don't even know. Like you said, like you didn't know until you read it on my social media. You had no idea. But it was because I put that out there. Now you do know.
And
Right.
sometimes a person just need to get it out their head, whatever the it is,
Mm-hmm.
because you have thoughts scrambling around in your brain, and you can't tie anything together. But just talking and having someone else to listen to, it's like having a partner or a teammate to help you put those ends together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we get to the end of the interview. Are there any more comments from the listening audience? Any questions that you guys might have for the interviewee, for Tamara, in regard to what she shared so far? All right, Tamara, do you have any takeaways for the listening audience? You got an A or B selection, a travel tip, a joke, or a recipe that you would like to share before we close out?
Nothing that I can say on your stats.
Right.
No, but my thing that I would tell people is like, live your life, love your life, and if you feel the need that you need help, reach out to somebody, anybody, before it gets too bad where it's just a no-win situation. And I'm like, you'll be surprised at even some of the relationships that will grow out of you just saying something. Like, you know how they always say, a closed mouth don't get fed. Mm-hmm. So it's just like, until you say something, you never know. You never know what the answer will be. You never know what kind of help is out there. You never know. You just never know until you say it.
Yeah, good stuff, Tamara. So live your life, love your life, share, good, bad, or indifferent, because a closed mouth won't get healed.
Mm-hmm.
Is
That won't get healed. Right.
it? All right. Well, quick wellness check before we close out. Ivory, you doing okay? We talked about some pretty deep stuff here. Just a quick wellness check before we check out. You doing all right?
I'm fine.
All right. Penelope Stewart, are you still there?
She is what she is.
You hear? I see her moving in that corner.
All right.
She, she might be
No,
on
I'm
mute.
still here.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, great conversation. I agree with everyone's opinion and message, and you're on track. I definitely say if you feel a need, seek help, not only through your friends and family, but you also need to seek professional help. So I would just encourage everyone um, just to listen and seek help when you need help.
And my thing is also, don't think because you're seeking help that makes you weak. It's probably the strongest people to me are the ones that ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Live your life, love your life, and share. Tamara, closing out. You doing okay?
Yes, I am. I'm great.
All right. And now
I'm
this,
on vacation. I'm fabulous.
yeah, I thought that was perfect timing for you, to go on an extended vacation. And I'm glad I was able to hear you laugh today and hear that you're in a good space, right now. And again, just a compliment for to you being brave enough to share, even the struggles that you were having at that particular time. So thank you for being available to complete this interview. I want to thank the listening audience as well. And this is a solution focused brief interview brought to you by MZZ for Life Coaching Solutions, where we strive to provide a values driven experiential approach to life coaching. I want to thank you guys for making yourselves available to participate in this interview today.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Love you too.
Hope to see you next time. Bye bye.
All